It is the Obstructed View podcast, and as you can see, Cam Stuart of the Cam Stuart Show, or the Cam Show at Rogue. Then he's got his Locked On Baylor, and then of course he's on the Matt Mosley Show with Cam Stewart. Oddly enough, so we do spend a fair amount of time together, 4 to 6 weekdays on ESPN Central Texas until we decide to leave the station. And Cam, you just let me know. Just let me whenever we ride off into the sunset. Now, but we're enjoying it, and this is a couple of different routes I want to go. Cam is kind enough, gracious enough to join us today, but he's got many other things to get to, so we're going to try to be conscious of that here. Cam, I found it interesting here on Obstructed View that the Bears got, God love you if you're committing to Baylor football right now, right? With this staff, knowing what's going on, they're still out there recruiting. They're still out talking to people. Keenan's out. He's out and about. And they're having to go through, hey, we're all going to be back. We're going to win some games. We're going to be here. Bears got a tight end from Austin Westlake. It's a great school, and he's a good player for them. And he's close to a top 100 tight end in the nation, kind of right there on the cusp, and certainly a nice player, a 3-star player. But it got me to thinking, Cam. That's think about how hard it's hard to put a nice class together in the first place, but then to hold it together when your season's going the wrong direction, and then to add to it. So we should say, Brody Wilhelm, welcome to the fold. Welcome to the fold. That is nice. Cam, I can't help but wonder when in the recruiting world, and we got things changing by the day, the portal's changing. By the way, right before we came on, Cam, I just noticed that the national letter of intent is going away. They're going to have something sort of different. There'll be an agreement, but the old school national letter of intent, it's gone. It's over.
No more fax machines.
No. There's no such thing as a national letter of intent. There's like financial aid agreement or something like that. But NLI, and I love the fact that the group that oversaw that is just like, we don't want this anymore, right? They're just like, get this away from us. And so they're the reason this thing's going away. They're like, oh, we want out of this thing. And so the NCAA, at a time when you got all sorts of huge changes, the NLI has gone away. Cam, I just think it's interesting. Baylor gets a recruit. We're in touch with our buddy Turboff from 247, Baylor 247, and he had the news on this. But, if this thing keeps going the wrong direction, you can't help but think that this 2025 class is slowly but surely going to start kind of eroding. Players are going to take a different. And right now, Cam, with both TCU recruits and Baylor recruits, and I might add, those are two of the top 3 programs right now in 2025 recruiting. If you're out, if you like some of these kids, which people do, because Baylor was able to beat out some big time schools for like Taz Williams from Red Oak and that kind of thing. What are you telling? You've got to be the TCU recruits and the Baylor recruits. I guarantee you they're starting to hear from schools like, hey, man, you're going to have a new staff. We'd love to have you. We still have room for you. Don't you believe that's going on as we speak?
Yes, because I think if you're looking at Baylor or TCU, their 2 main competitors on the recruiting trail really are Tech at the top of the Big 12 right now and SMU in the top 25 right now. It's not a good scenario for both Baylor or TCU. Like you mentioned, 2 of the top 3 in the Big 12 for the 2025 recruiting class. And let's take stock to where Baylor is at right now. Okay, we're midway through the season, number 3 recruiting class in the Big 12. But right now they're 2-4. Okay, so taking stock with this, nobody is decommitted yet. We haven't seen that. Certainly they're getting whispers in their ears for sure, as is with any good recruit, right? But right now they're halfway through the season and they're 2-4. So the 2 scenarios that seem the most likely right now are you're going to finish with a losing season and or you're going to fire the head coach at the end of the season. That seems likely at 2-4 midway through the season right now. And both of those scenarios mess with your 2025 recruiting class. Now, for you, the Baylor fan, watching every week and consuming all this, you probably are thinking, I think justifiably so, I don't care necessarily about that class if we can't keep winning, if we continue to lose, right? So right now, there is a scenario where the Bears do finish at 6-6. They go to a bowl game, the coach keeps his job, and all those kids come in from the 2025 class. But what we're at right now is that's not very likely. And whether it is a moving on from the coach or just a losing season, or even, by the way, Matt, just a 6-6 season, which we'd consider a success right now, I don't know if all these 2025 recruits are going to think that when they see SMU, playing for a conference championship in the ACC, or they see Tech potentially winning 8 or 9 games. I don't know if it's that sexy an offer, even if Baylor does get to 6-6 or hopefully 7-6 with a bowl win.
Well, to do that, you're going to have to get hot and win 4 games. And I do think that would, I'm not saying they won't lose 1 or 2 or something, but I think that would, at least the momentum that you would have would preserve the class. The only other scenario I would throw out, and I think people probably think I'm crazy for saying this, but it's just, I think you and I brought it up on the radio show, weekdays 4 to 6. If you lose to Tech and then lose to a bad Oklahoma State game at home, I mean, that gets you to 2-6. I mean, now hopefully you could find a way to beat Oklahoma State, but let's say, and after that you've got the TCU game. Like, if this thing got to 2-6, I think you would almost owe it to yourself. Well, then I guess you got the scenario where Dave could go 4-0, right, to save his job. Are they going to let him try to? Are they going to let him try to do that? Or you could before that TCU game, you could go ahead and make the decision, get out there, start your search. Not that the search hasn't already started. I mean, Mac, I'm not saying he's given up on Dave, but Mac has names and he's watching games across the country. Maybe we've been watching one last night. There was a weird Tuesday night game that involved a potential candidate for these head coaching situations. In this day and age, you do have to get ahead. Now, that doesn't mean you have to fire your coach, but you have to work ahead. I would think it would be a compelling situation if you got to 2-6 to go ahead and make the move that it's not going in the right direction and let Keenan Hall finish out the season. The man who has spearheaded, and the biggest reason you have a lot of these recruits for 2025. And if you get to 2-6, you let him coach the last 3 or 4 ball games of this season, or 3 if you get to 3-6, whatever the case may be. Right. I don't know exactly when you would want to put him in, but if you think he is a potentially great future head coach type, and he's at age, 37, 38 years old, I think it would behoove you to give it a go and see if he could rally the team and how they responded to him. Because otherwise, new coach is going to come in and we never get to see Keenan again. Because I've heard you say and others go, you got to try to keep Keenan. And while you were able to keep Joey in the transition from Matt, but that was different because Matt wasn't getting fired. Right. Joey had proven himself as a valuable recruiter and a huge part of this program and a head coaching candidate. So but it doesn't happen often. It doesn't happen that often. Yep. And I think most new coaches don't want to be told, you need to keep this guy as your assistant head coach. Yeah. We love this guy. They want to do their own thing, and they should be able to. Like Chadwell or whoever's coming in here, or G.J. Kinney, probably shouldn't be told first thing, well, you have to keep Keenan Hall. So your only chance of ever seeing if Keenan might be a candidate would be to let him coach out the season. And who would be against that? Like, who in the world at Baylor, like in terms of fan base, would be like, no, I want to see we're 2-6, but I want to see Dave get a look at these last 4 games. At 2-6, you would know which way this thing's headed.
Yeah, and two important parts of that, by the way. We've talked about it on the air. I've had recruits' parents in my comment section of Locked On Baylor saying, if you do make a change, make sure you hold on to Jake Spavital and Keenan Hall. Those are the guys that are going to keep the class intact. And so it's out there. Like that thought process is out there and in public. You know what I mean? And the other part I find interesting about, maybe you do make Keenan Hall the interim coach to round out the season. It might not even necessarily need to be like, hey, could this guy be our next head coach? It might not even be that, because we talk about how it is rare, the Joey McGuire situation, where he stayed on as an assistant for both staffs. But let's play it out that Keenan Hall does take the job at 2-6, and they win 3 of those 4 games, and the players love him, and he's a big part of this recruiting class coming in. He's probably not ready to go and just be someone's head coach in the Power 4, but in that scenario, then maybe you do have a coach like a Jamie Chadwell or a GJ Kinney that comes in and says, you know what? I want you as part of my staff. Not even necessarily does he want to stick around for a new regime. I think at that point, if you get some positive momentum with Keenan Hall as an interim coach and with what he's done on the recruiting trail, any new coach might come in and say, you know what, Keenan, I'd really like to keep you around. I'd like to have you as the associate head coach. You're going to get a nice little pay bump. I think he already is the associate. You're gonna get a nice little pay bump here, and we want you to stick around because we think you're a future part of this program. And if we get some success, if I'm Jamie Chadwell coming in and we have a couple of winning seasons in a row and we get to a New Year's Six bowl game, and then they are going to be coming after you as a head coach. Look at Joey McGuire. It just happened in your program. So I think it's not common for coaches to come in and retain some of their assistants that were already on the staff. But if you got a guy who comes in and strikes while the iron's hot a little bit as the interim coach, I think that opens the eyes of whoever is coming in saying, maybe we should keep this guy around. And then that would be your kind of best of both worlds scenario.
All right, we're gonna monitor that, and we'll see. And again, hopefully, my gut tells me that just does not sound like Baylor, though, to fire
Mid-season.
somebody in season and try something else. It's I do think the players still are playing for Aranda. They're not playing well enough, obviously, but at some point they got to break through with a win here. And again, it could calm things down. Although we saw last season there were a couple of there was one amazing comeback win against UCF, right? And it temporarily was kind of an exciting deal, and it just had no staying power. There was no sustainability about that. Bears now in their bye week, and then they'll get ready to head out to Texas Tech. Cam, I did note, and we'll have him both on Obstructed View and on the Mosley Show. Joey McGuire, I'm sure the Baylor administrators will love to have Joey on. But hey, your head coach won't come on with us, so might as well get the opposing coaches. But Joey McGuire will be on one day next week, and we'll get word to you. Cam, that will be a pre-recorded session, so that might require you to stop by the studio a little early. I don't know.
No.
That normally does not work out well for me. Now, last thing I had for you, before you got to run, and I'll continue with a couple of Cowboys nuggets, is you've got a Liverpool jersey on today. Something that has been brought to my attention, a fascinating story from Ross Dellinger about a new group of Disney executives who've come up with a revenue plan to pump all this private equity, like $9 billion worth, because college administrators right now are like, how in the world is this sustainable? What are we going to do? Meanwhile, and so this is a really interesting one. And Cam, as a EPL type guy, you'll like this. There's a relegation aspect to this, and the revenue share amount. This would take all the people in the Power Four. You take like 70 teams, and you would have a tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. And I got news for Baylor fans. Guess where you're going to be based on just the most recent play? You're going to be in tier 3, but you're at the table. You're at least at the
Yep.
table, and you would have your way of moving up. This is where it's going to go likely. It's just, it's in is it 10 years, 15 years? I would say not even that far. Part of this has to be you have to wait until some of these media rights things end, but those things, always go faster than you think it's going to go. So I would say sometime in the next 5 to 10 years, some model like this, Cam, could take place. And oh, by the way, this will be discussed. Now, this is the Rudy plan, named after Rudy Rudiger, the famous walk-on at Notre Dame, who you've probably interviewed or met, Cam, if I know you.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, really? I
not
figured
that I've been privy to. No.
This is the Rudy plan. Now, this plan that's starting to be shared around places, Cam, it's also happens in the context of today and tomorrow is the summit. The summit's taking place this week.
Dun, dun, dun.
Between the SEC and the Big Ten. So nothing can really take place for the future unless the big boys let it happen. One thing they're going to be talking about is we want the SEC and the Big Ten to have 4 automatic qualifiers. So basically 8 of the 12 to go to these 2 conferences. Now, Brett Yormark has spoken out against that, as he should. And his whole point is, let's play it out. Let's not have some manufactured thing where all these people are given guaranteed spots. Let's actually play for this thing. And by the way, you might end up with a ton of Big Ten and SEC.
Yep.
It could happen anyway.
But let the chips fall.
You got a committee, but let's play this thing out. Mm-hmm. Let's stop asking for all these guaranteed things. The other thing that'll be discussed, of course, is there's been studies that show, Cam, that like 6 schools, and of course, University of Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, it's who you think, right? Are like sort of supplying the rest of all these revenue share. They're doing all the work, and their brands are bringing in huge money. And so much like the ACC has demanded with Clemson and Florida State, I think these SEC and Big Ten schools are going to say, give us our true share. Okay. We're tired of. So Cam, as this plays out, how do you see? I wanted to get your take on this. Where do you think this is headed? And again, I do not think the SEC wants to be part of some super league. They still see value in we're the SEC. We're the freaking SEC. Why would we let you water down our brand and bring on like 70 schools and we're all clumped in together? That is not what they want.
Yeah, and I think what's funny too, Matt, is if they go to some sort of super league concept, like those teams at the bottom of those conferences aren't really going to be a part of it. Like if they had their druthers, and you want to talk about the brands that are driving these things, if they're going to make some sort of super conference, that's not going to include South Carolina or Mississippi State or Illinois or Rutgers. Those teams aren't going to be a part of it. You're part of the Big Ten and the SEC now, but that's not how it's going to be. I found this very intriguing. They had something similar they pitched in the spring that was all revenue incentivized. So the tiers were based off revenue. And like, I understood it. And there was like, it was the 70 Power 5 teams, and they were split up into 7 divisions, or 10 with 7 or 7 with 10. And you could get relegated from it, but it was tough to come back. Like only the group of 5 teams could come up any given year. It was very odd. So yeah, it does have a bit of a soccer angle to it, but I to answer your question, is this the way it's going to go? I think this is the way it's going to go.
Yeah.
And to your point, I mean, these media rights deals, they can happen faster than you think. I mean, look at the Big 12 and look at the Pac 12 on both ends of that spectrum.
All right. And the Rudy plan has been viewed by Baylor. It was one of the schools that Yahoo and Ross Dellinger had learned that the Bears had talked to these folks. It's a venture capital firm called Smash Capital. Cam, I think it's a group we would enjoy working for,
Probably.
and
Yeah.
and they're just it's a huge venture capital fund, and they want to get involved in college athletics, and it is former Disney executives. And oh, by the way, who have they brought in? But the Imperial Jack Swarbrick, the longtime Notre Dame AD, is now part of the Smash Group. Boy, I wish somebody would pay me a consulting fee. I'd like to go in there and help Smash in a hurry. Okay, Cam, this concludes the Cam Stuart portion of this. Watch the Cam show. He's got a great one coming up with his father, Bill Stewart, and talking about Louis Tiant was wow. We lost him with the Red Sox, but you did a thing with your dad, who's a great longtime Red Sox fan, and so that will be extremely. I think people will enjoy that. So, Cam, I appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
And there he goes, Cam Stuart of the Cam Show, the Mosley Show, and everything else that he's a part of. Locked On Baylor. All right, I'm going to continue on here for just a little bit. I just wanted to discuss a couple things going on with the Cowboys as we speak, as we record this on Wednesday afternoon. The just got word that Deron Bland is practicing for the Cowboys today. That would be a huge step to get him back. And also Guyton is Tyler Guyton for the Cowboys is going to be participating as well. Those might be limited. There'll be some reps that are kind of monitored and all that kind of thing. But I think this is something that's going to help the Cowboys. Of course, we'll keep our eye on Micah Parsons to see when he's ready to go. But Tyler Guyton, who'd been starting at left tackle this season, the rookie out of Oklahoma, it'll be nice to have him back in, although Tyler Smith slid out there, did an extremely nice job. But Tyler will go back in. Of course, you'll have Zach, who left with cramps in that game, out there at right guard. He left the game but was able to come back. Everything else should be intact. BB continues to start at center. So the line should be better. They take on the Detroit Lions. I would say Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones both sort of indicating that I think iffy, quote, iffy was the word with Micah Parsons. So I don't think anybody should get too excited about the return of Micah. What I expect the Lions to do is to show up and run the ball like crazy. They do. Campbell is someone who commits to the run. The Lions are playing better. They've had some down moments this year. They've been up and down a little bit, but they're back. And of course, I mean, this is a team that, obviously what they did last year was remarkable. And it's what people just dream of the Cowboys being able to do. And that's to get to a championship game. And the fact that the Lions did is just, I think, beyond belief for people. And especially given their history and everything. But this Cowboys with an opportunity to get to 4-2 would be huge. The receiving core, I mean, I think it was a great night for Tolbert, Jalen Tolbert, to get that touchdown, to have right around 80 yards receiving in that game. I think it was 5 catches for around 80 yards. Tremendous effort by him. All hands on deck. Turpin made a huge play down the middle of the field. Let me sound off just for a minute on, the quarterback. And with Dak Prescott, it's such a zero-sum game for some people. It's kind of like, well, he led that last comeback, so he's the greatest quarterback ever. Some people are so stuck on his interceptions they can't even look at what he did. I mean, he had 2 unbelievable drives in that game. One late in the third quarter, one at the end of the game. So the best news is that he can have these bad things happen and then overcome them. And he should be celebrated for that, and that's a great thing. But you also have to go that the reason they needed to come back I mean, you fumble in the red zone. Whatever he and CD, whoever's fault that was, horrible interception in the red zone. Another play in that game when they've got a 13-10 lead, they're trying to drive, and he just throws the ball way down the field, and it's an easy pick. He overthrows his receiver, and there's Joey Porter Jr. with the interception. Again, these are sort of just mind-blowing mistakes that your $60 million quarterback is making. And so, again, the great news is he was able to overcome them. Can you overcome that kind of thing against the Detroit Lions? I think the answer is no. I don't think that'll happen. I think Cowboys have a shot. I think the good news is they got gashed at home so badly, especially in the running game against the Ravens and the Saints. They've shown the ability to shore some of that up with better performances against the run in these last two wins. And I mean, the Lions are going to be efficient. Gibbs, I mean, they do some things in the run game, and they're going to commit to it. And that's the way Dan Campbell is. That's the way he's put together. I mean, he is not ever going to abandon the run. And the fact that to be able to challenge the Cowboys, the thought is, you got to hit them in the run game, and you got to hit them on the perimeter run game. The great news is at the point of attack, whether it be Tyrus Wheat, Linval Joseph, Lawson over at defensive end, Odigizua, like the Cowboys really had some players step up, Carlos Watkins, and play a lot better on that defensive line. So kudos to Mike Zimmer for putting together a plan that allowed the Cowboys to function even though down all those players. Let's remember, now they don't have Nealon, so they are down their top three pass rushers, down four linemen altogether. This is a tough spot for the Cowboys. But at home, they have to reassert some sort of home field advantage. Okay, you can't have the Lions coming in, getting off to one of those great starts, and then the Cowboys just playing from behind. You can't have it happen. And again, they've shown progress. Now they're 3-2. People are feeling good about things. And boy, if you could get this thing to 4-2, you would be feeling great about where the Cowboys are and where their playoff hopes are. Right now, it looks like the Commanders may run away and hide from everybody. Do I think that's sustainable for a whole season? I do not. But Jaden Daniels looks awesome, and there's a pretty decent chance the way they're playing that the Cowboys and the Commanders could be. That could be a big showdown in November. That's mid-November, I believe, and there is a chance that I think it's November 21st. Now that I think about it, there is a chance that Washington is 8-3. 8-3. Right now, they've only got one loss. I mean, they're sitting there 4-1, looking great. But I think the most reasonable thing to expect from them is to be 8-3, and about the best the Cowboys could be is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 7-4. Right, heading into that game, and so that would be a big-time divisional showdown. What will the Eagles be doing? What will the Giants, who came off a big win? I don't think the Giants are going to climb back in it, but the Eagles and the Cowboys, they have to just stay somewhat connected. And again, I would be shocked, as great as they've looked at times, I would be shocked if the Commanders would run away and hide. But by the way, they have some of these former Cowboys players. I mean, every time I turn on the tape, every time I watch replays of what the Commanders are doing, there's Dorrance Armstrong, making plays. There are former Cowboys linemen and former Cowboys players doing really good things for those Commanders. All right, that is Obstructed View. We appreciate it. I think hopefully we've given you a lot of good Baylor and college football nuggets, as well as some Cowboys on the end of it. Check out after Cowboys games, the Doomsday podcast that I do with Ed Werder. It's also on the Rogue Media Network. And then you can listen to me weekdays on ESPN Central Texas. That show is 4 to 6. For my man Josh Beard and Mike Hamilton at Rogue, And for Cam Stewart, I am Matt Mosley. Everybody have a great one, and we will see you next time.
We are Rogue Media Sports.